In a real study, people watched someone deny what they did, attack the person confronting them, and flip the blame. And by the end, they were more convinced the victim was the guilty one, not the abuser, the victim. Here's how it worked. Researchers showed people a scenario where someone got hurt by their partner, then showed the accused person's response. And the wildest part? The people watching believed it. They rated the real victim as less believable, more responsible, basically guilty. That's not a fluke. That's a documented, repeatable pattern. It's got a name. And here's the part that should actually get under your skin. This isn't just something strangers fall for in a university study. It's happening in your texts, your group chats, your actual relationship right now. And you don't clock it, because manipulation that works never looks like manipulation. It looks like a completely reasonable conversation. So today, we're going through the real signs, not the movie villain stuff, the quiet ones, the ones sitting in your last argument and you didn't even notice.
So, let's start with the sign nobody thinks to look for, because it doesn't feel like manipulation. It feels like being included. Here's the move. A manipulator doesn't hand you the full picture of anything, ever. Not a conflict, not their past, not how someone else feels about you. They hand you pieces, curated ones, the version that keeps you leaning their direction. People who manipulate covertly are often obsessive about controlling what you know. Not through lying exactly, more through leaving stuff out, playing up the parts that help their case, just quietly not mentioning the rest. And here's the thing, that's actually harder to catch than a straight-up lie. A lie you can fact-check. A gap? You don't even know it's there. Here's what that actually looks like. They tell you their ex went crazy and screamed at them, but quietly leave out the part where the ex found them cheating. So you end up defending a victim who's actually the villain. Think about the last time you got a secondhand story about a fight, or what somebody really meant by something, and you just believed the frame you were handed. That gut drop feeling later when you find out there was way more to it? Yeah, that's usually not an accident. And on its own, this looks like nothing. Everybody leaves stuff out sometimes. That's what makes it the perfect opening move. It's deniable. It's small. It's just one piece. But here's where it stops being small. Because once someone's controlling what you know, the next step is controlling what you trust, including whether you trust your own memory of what actually happened. And that particular move has a name, a pretty famous one, and it's way more calculated than people realize.
All right, so that name, you've heard it. Everybody's heard it. Gaslighting. And real quick, I gotta say this because it matters. That word gets thrown around so much now that half the time people use it for stuff that's just a normal disagreement. Somebody misremembers a date, that's not gaslighting. So let's actually talk about what it means, for real. The psychologist who really put this on the map, Robin Stern, breaks it down into stages. First one's disbelief. Something feels off, but you talk yourself out of it. Then defense. You actually try to bring it up, and instead of a real conversation, you get denial or blame flipped back on you, or just flat, that never happened. And the third stage is the brutal one, depression. You stop trusting your own read on reality altogether. You start pre-doubting yourself before anyone even says anything. And here's what's wild about it. It's not usually one big dramatic lie. It's tiny. I never said that. You're remembering it wrong. You're way too sensitive about this. Said calmly. Said like they're being patient with you. Over and over and over. And the scary part is, after enough rounds of that, you start doing their job for them. You second-guess yourself before you even open your mouth. So if you've ever walked away from a conversation more confused than when you walked in, replaying it trying to figure out where you went wrong, that confusion isn't random. That's the actual mechanism working. But here's the part almost nobody talks about. What happens when you actually catch them? When you've got the receipts, you're sure you bring it up directly. Because there's a move for that too. And it's honestly the sneakiest one on this list. Okay, this is the one from the hook. Let's actually name it. It's called DARVO. Deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. A psychologist named Jennifer Freyd out of the University of Oregon coined it back in the 90s, and she's been studying it ever since. And here's basically how it plays out, step by step, every single time. Step 1, deny. Flat out, that didn't happen. Step 2, attack. Not the topic, you, your character, your memory, your motives, whatever's closest. And step 3, the one that really gets you, reverse victim and offender. Suddenly, they're not explaining themselves anymore. They're hurt. They're wounded. You're the one who's being unfair, being cruel, being so aggressive right now. And you sit there thinking, wait, how did I become the bad guy in the last 90 seconds? That study from The Hook? Freyd and a researcher named Sarah Harsey actually tested this in 2020. People who heard the accused person do the deny-attack-reverse combo rated the real victim as more responsible for what happened, more to blame, less believable, just from hearing that pattern play out. And that's the part that should really land for you. Because if total strangers, regular people in a controlled study with zero personal stake in the outcome, can get flipped that easily, imagine what it does to you. Someone you actually love, someone whose approval you want. You don't stand a chance in the moment. Nobody does. So here's the thing about DARVO. It's not really about winning the argument. It's about making sure the argument never happens again, because next time, you'll just apologize before you even bring it up. And once that pattern's locked in, that's when the relationship shifts into something else entirely. Something that starts feeling less like a relationship and honestly, more like a slot machine. Yeah, I said slot machine. Stick with me, because this is the one that explains basically everything people don't understand about why victims don't just leave. Back in 1981, two researchers, Dutton and Painter, studied this exact pattern and gave it a name, traumatic bonding. And the mechanism underneath it goes all the way back to old-school behavioral psychology. B.F. Skinner's operant conditioning research found something kind of unsettling. A reward you get every single time, that's easy for your brain to let go of. But a reward that shows up unpredictably, sometimes yes, sometimes no, no pattern you can call, that's the one your brain gets hooked on hardest. That's literally the mechanism behind slot machines. It's not the winning that gets you. It's not knowing when the next win's coming. Now put that inside a relationship. Cold, distant, critical, and then out of nowhere, they're warm again. Affectionate, apologizing even, making you feel like the luckiest person alive. You don't know when it's coming, so when it lands, that relief hits 10 times harder than normal affection ever would. Researcher Patrick Carnes built a whole framework around this. And here's the cruel irony of it. The bad treatment isn't what creates the attachment. It's what makes the good moments feel like winning the jackpot. Your brain starts chasing the high of the good phase, not realizing the bad phase is what's manufacturing that high in the first place. So if you've ever thought, but they're not always like this, sometimes they're actually amazing, I need you to sit with that for a second. Because that inconsistency, that's not proof it's not that bad. In fact, that's usually the exact mechanism keeping you stuck. And once you're locked into that cycle, there's one more piece that seals it shut. It's quieter than everything we've covered so far, and it's usually the last thing standing between you and actually leaving. So here's the quiet one. Moving the goalposts. This is where you finally meet whatever expectation they set. You change, you apologize, you do the thing they asked, and instead of things getting better, the target just moves. New complaint, new standard, new thing you're apparently doing wrong now. Say your partner tells you you're not affectionate enough. So you step it up, big time, and now suddenly you're smothering them. Too much, clingy. So you pull back, give them space like they just said they wanted, and now you're cold and distant. There was never a version of you that was going to be enough. That was never actually the point. This works specifically because it keeps you in permanent striving mode. You're always one adjustment away from finally getting it right.
Except you never do. Because right was never a fixed place. It was a moving target built to keep you off balance and focused on fixing yourself instead of questioning them. And there's a partner move to this one: triangulation. Bringing a third person into it. Even my mom thinks you're being dramatic. My friends all say I'm being way too patient with you. Suddenly, it's not just their opinion anymore. It's a jury. And now you're not just doubting yourself, you're isolated because it feels like everyone agrees with them. Here's the pattern underneath both of these. You start doing something almost nobody notices themselves doing. You take the blame every time, automatically, even when you can't quite explain what you did wrong. And that part, the automatic guilt, deserves its own moment, because that's usually the last wall standing. Okay, real talk for a second. I know some of you watching this are thinking, okay, but I'm not dumb. I would notice this happening to me. And look, I get why you'd think that, but that's actually the exact belief that keeps smart, self-aware people stuck the longest. Here's why. A psychologist named Leon Festinger had this concept called cognitive dissonance. Basically, when what you believe and what you're experiencing don't match up, your brain hates that gap so much it'll rewrite one side just to close it. So if you believe you're a smart, capable person who wouldn't stay in something unhealthy, and you are in fact staying, your brain doesn't usually conclude, okay, I was wrong about this relationship. It's way more likely to quietly downgrade the red flags instead. It's not that bad. I'm probably overreacting. Everyone fights like this. That's not you being weak. That's just how brains work under pressure. Festinger actually studied this with a doomsday cult whose prophecy completely failed to come true. And instead of admitting they were wrong, the members believed even harder. Same wiring, different situation. And that's exactly what guilt induction plugs into. Once you've quietly agreed you might be the problem, apologizing becomes automatic. You catch yourself saying sorry before you've even figured out what happened. Not because you did something wrong, because staying in the relationship requires you to believe you did. So if you've been sitting here thinking some of this sounds a little too familiar, I want you to actually hear this next part. Because recognizing the pattern is the whole turning point. It's genuinely the hardest part of all of this. So after everything we just went through, here's the good news. You don't actually need a psychology degree to catch this stuff in real time. There's one gut check that cuts through basically every tactic we covered. Ask yourself, do I feel more confused after talking to this person than before? Not sad, not annoyed, confused. That specific foggy, replaying the conversation in your head feeling, that's not a coincidence, and it's not you being too sensitive. That confusion is often the actual signal. Healthy conflict leaves you clear on what happened, even if it's uncomfortable. Manipulation leaves you unsure what just happened at all. Here's another one. Watch how they respond to the word no. Just a plain, boring no. A healthy person might be disappointed. They might push back once, but they accept it. A manipulator treats your no like evidence in a trial. They'll cross-examine you until you're apologizing for having a boundary in the first place. Last one. Pay attention to your body before you get to the logic of it. That knot in your stomach before a conversation? That instinct to rehearse what you're going to say 5 times before you say it? That's not overthinking. That's your nervous system picking up on a pattern before your conscious brain's caught up to it. You don't need to catch every tactic by name. You just need to trust that feeling enough to actually look closer. So here's where we land. Manipulation doesn't work because you're gullible. It works because it's specifically built to not look like manipulation while it's happening. A denial here, a shifted goalpost there, a good day right when you were about to walk away. But now you've got the actual names for it. Gaslighting, DARVO, intermittent reinforcement, moving the goalposts. And once you can name a pattern, it starts losing its grip on you. That's not a coincidence either. That's just what happens when confusion turns into clarity. If this one hit close to home, do me a favor and hit subscribe. This channel's built entirely around stuff exactly like this. the psychology hiding in your everyday relationships. And drop a comment. Which one of these signs did you actually recognize? I read every single one. Because at the end of the day, the moment you stop doubting what you clearly felt, that's the moment it stops working on you.